I'm not an insurance agent or broker, but my time spent on the Friends of McNabb's Island Society, we, like you today, asked many questions about insurance. We were very concerned because we had trails that were in very poor shape. We were just starting to upgrade them to be useful for the public again. And there were many questions about what happens when we have construction on the trail, what happens when somebody falls down. We are a member, and somebody mentioned it today, and I don't see this chap here, maybe he's gone home. We are a member, an affiliate, I should say, of the Nova Scotia Trails Association. And they too had the same concerns. So what we did was we looked among our memberships and we found a property lawyer, a woman who actually gets involved with these kind of insurance claims. And she came and she spoke to the Nova Scotian Trails Association for 2 hours about insurance. I did attend a workshop by the Nova Scotia Lighthouse Preservation Society in 2003, and we had an insurance agent come in then. And frankly, all he wanted to do was sell his product. And I think this lawyer really gave us a lot better information for us to go forward to insurance agent or broker and get the product that we felt we needed. So I have based my slides and my talk on the information this woman gave us, because I think there's a lot of similarities here. You're going to have the public come and see your lighthouse. You're going to have construction around your lighthouse. You're going to have directors and officers. What about volunteers? And I'm hoping that this PowerPoint is going to give you some of these answers. I know there was a lady here who wanted, what happens if? I can't give you the definite if, because that depends whether it would go ahead to a court of law. It depends on your lawyers. It depends on so many things. Anyways, we'll proceed, and perhaps you'll get some direction there. So as I said, we had a lot of questions about insurance this morning. We had someone ask Bob last night about insurance. It certainly is one of the significant amounts that we see on your income and expense statement. And unfortunately, it's one of those expenses that doesn't seem to go down as time goes on. You're lucky if it's going to stay the same. In most cases, it's probably going to go up, and that's going to be based on claims that, have been processed, and they have a whole department on that that determines that. So there's really two questions you want to ask yourself. What type of insurance do you need, and what amount is too little, and what amount is too much? The first one, we'll start at the top there, is the Directors and Officers Liability. And what this insurance gives you is coverages for damages, judgments, cost, and defense of legal actions, claims, or proceedings. The second one is general liability. We call it, the Friends of McNabb's, event liability. That's when we organize a great big event. We know there's going to be 2,000 people over on the island. Well, that's a little exaggeration, I guess, but certainly more than the usual, maybe 20 ambling along. And what it is, it's third-party claims arising from proven negligence. It has to be proved in a court of law. The third one, and this is the rarer one, and this is why you have to, there's been much talk this morning about people grouping together, and this is the reason you do it. If you can group together organizations that have a similar goal or outlook, you can get volunteer accidental. And actually, we were very surprised this was not extraordinarily a large amount. And it's nice because it covers injury sustained by an insured person while working as a volunteer. So I'm going to start with the Directors and Officers Liability. What does it do for you? Well, it protects your assets and also your spouse's personal access. And it provides the cost of defense and associated resources. And if it should ever go to court and you had to pay something, this is the insurance that will pay it out. When do you use it? When there is a suspected wrongful act in the discharge of a director's duties and a lawsuit is filed by another director, club members, or financial institution. Some examples of a wrongful act would be the mishandling of funds. You've gathered all this money, you hired people to come in and do construction, and suddenly one of your officers who has signing authority manages to write themselves a check and go around the world. So, That would be one thing. There would be a personal benefit by a director that would jeopardize the society's tax-exempt status, or you fail to implement safety procedures at your lighthouse and your lighthouse is shut down by regulators. So these are the type of things that are considered wrongful acts. Now, there's this big, long legal definition that the lawyer gave us about what a wrongful act was in legalese. And I'll just add that, unfortunately, I was not like David this morning. I did not print off piles of these sheets. I have some, but if you leave me your email and you do want it, I can send you the slides plus the notes. So a wrongful act is an actual or alleged negligent act, error, omission, misstatement, misleading statement, neglect, or breach of duty by the director and officers, individually or collectively, in the discharge of their legal duties, solely in their capacity as directors and officers of the society. So what are your legal duties? Well, under the law, directors and officers must act in good faith and in the best interests of the society, act with a duty of care as a reasonably prudent person, and I think Gert addressed that this morning, the way they thought ahead, what happens if, because after all, if you had grandchildren and you took them out on a boat, you would make sure there's a PFD for each one of them. You would have some plan in hand in case one of them leaned too far out of the boat and they went into the drink and you had to retrieve them. You should have those plans, and that's what I think they're trying to say, that you should have that emergency plan that Bob was talking about. You have to perform your duties in accordance with applicable statutes or your own charter, and that's your charter that you would use. Some people call it articles of incorporation. Others, it's just sort of, I guess, a very distinct mission statement about why your society exists. And I'm going to call it society. Nonprofit is a long word, and I'm just going to call it society. Statutes that they're talking about here would be Income Tax Act, would be Employment Standards Act. So if you have summer students, you have to get them workman's comp. They have Competitions Act. Now, somebody talked about competitions here. I'm not too sure they were talking about writing or art, but certainly if you wanted to run a lottery or a raffle, I know the government really likes to step in on those. Unemployment Insurance Act, if you had a full-time person, I don't know, working year-round, and even they said Discrimination Act. So that's directors and officers insurance. Okay, why would you buy general liability? Well, it's similar to your homeowner's policy. It covers third-party injury. For instance, you had this step leading up to your lighthouse, and it had a loose board, and you were going to get at it, but some visitor comes along, steps on it, falls off, accidentally breaks their arm. This is what it would be used for. Another one would be third-party property damage. So you have this nail sticking out on the inside of your lighthouse. The person comes in with this very expensive fur coat. Don't ask me why, but in Quebec they still do wear a lot of fur coats, and it gets torn. And probably as a gesture of goodwill, you probably would offer to pay for it, but the fact is if it was very expensive, perhaps you'd want to touch your policy for it. The one thing about these two is negligence has to be proven. It's not enough for somebody to say, oh, I fell and I'm going to sue you. It doesn't happen like that. And that's why, as Gert was pointing out, you try to kind of think of the areas that are hazards around your site, post things, encourage people to act prudently, and just go from there. And I will truthfully say, I've been involved with the Friends of McNabb since 2002, and twice a year we hire a boat from Murphy's on the Water, and we bring people over, to enjoy the island. We have volunteers that do little tours. In that whole time, we've only had one person fall down and break something. And I know our poor president, she was in one heck of a tizzy. And it just happened that it was a an extra event we had added on. It was a summer picnic to commemorate the 20 years that the society had been incorporated, and we had hired St. John's ambulance people. And so, boy, they were happy to go into action. I'm telling you, they'd been sitting around all day doing nothing, and finally they got to do their thing, and they patched them up, and we arranged for a small boat to come and take them off the island, and we waited. Nothing happened. That person felt they'd been looked after real well, and we didn't have a problem with it. So it's those kind of things that help, you know, if you're going to plan something out of the ordinary, for sure. Why buy volunteer accident insurance? As I said, it's usually group insurance you get with other similar nonprofits. Perhaps, I don't want to speak out of turn here for Barrie, but perhaps down the road, if we have enough affiliates, we could see about getting some group insurance, because, you know, you obviously have your association that pays a little fee to our association, and that seems to make it all well in the insurance world. And what it does is it covers specific loss. I'm sure you maybe can remember, I don't even know if they sell it anymore because I don't have kids in grade school. Mine are all grown and gone. You know, they used to come home, and for $10 you could insure your kid during the school. If they broke an arm, they got $50, you know, and it went up from there. And that's exactly this kind of thing. It starts with life and paralysis and then works its way down. The other thing it does, it can provide up to 52 weeks of accidental indemnity for a volunteer who was gainfully employed immediately before the date of injury. And in the policy we have with the Nova Scotia Trails, it's $500 a week. It's not a fortune, but it will pay the bills, because that's about $2,000 a month. So if your employer, where you were before the date of injury, doesn't have anything like short-term disability for you or something, you can get something through this. And it will cover up to X number of volunteers who must be members in good standing. What this means is the insurer will say, well, how many people, volunteers on the average, do you have when you have an event, or if you have an activity? Well, we decided on 20. You don't have to name these people because the names will vary from activity to activity, but they have to be members in good standing. So it behooves you even to charge your members $2 a year just to say that they're part of your association. It's all legalese, and if you dot your I's and you cross your T's, everybody seems to be happy. Is it easy to sue? Well, real life is not TV. Suing is costly and must be proven. If the injured party loses, he or she is responsible for paying court costs. I think that really makes people stop. We all think that, oh, well, they ran up our bill and now we have to pay it. No, they lose, they pay it all. And there are actually several provincial acts that protect nonprofits, and I think this is perhaps something that a lot of people don't know. I can't speak for outside of Nova Scotia because our lawyer was only interested, obviously, in the acts in Nova Scotia. The first one is the Societies Act. Someone mentioned today the Registry of Joint Stocks. Yeah, that's where you register your name. I didn't go through that procedure, but I know on a yearly basis, and we do it here at the Lighthouse Preservation Society, we submit a name of the directors for the year, a financial statement, and we pay a fee, and it's probably more than $25 now, isn't it? 28, okay, it's gone up since I used to go do it. So that's the whole thing. You have to be registered with the Registry of Joint Stock as a nonprofit. Your annual fee, membership fee or subscription, now they're talking members here, not the joint stock, that means it's going to limit your personal liability. Directors are members, therefore you're protected. So there will be a limit to the personal liability somebody has. The next one is the Occupiers Liability Act. And this would be very applicable to this because you're going to take over a lighthouse. We took over trails. They're not really, what would you say, we don't occupy them. The society is assumed to have some measure of control of who uses the premises and for what activities. They have a duty of care to assure reasonable safety on premises. So if you were doing construction around your lighthouse, you would be expected to put up a sign, you know, construction in progress, put ropes around it, say, please keep back. If somebody is silly enough to cross those ropes because they want to take a picture of the lighthouse up and close and a can of paint hits them on the head, I think they'd have a harder time certainly to prove their case that they were where they were not supposed to be. And the duty of care does not apply to any person who willingly assumes risk using the premises. I was thinking of your chap last night that you talked about who went up the ladder, and he tied his ladder to a flagpole, and that flagpole gave up the ghost. This was a volunteer. And he fell down, and you thought you'd lost him, but thank God you didn't. Well, this is exactly what this is. A duty of care, this person wanted to go up that ladder. He willingly assumed the risk. Now, with your volunteer accidental, you might have been able to help him out a bit, but you didn't have to, okay, because he wanted to do this as a volunteer. The next one is the Off-Highway Act, and I think this will apply to some of the lighthouses that you have to go down a little private lane to get to the lighthouse. They're not all on the road. The operator or passenger on an off-highway is deemed to assume responsibility of care. So if they choose to go down your road and we'll say one of their rims gets flattened for some reason against a rock, well, they wanted to go down there. There must be no deliberate harm by the occupier. What this means is you don't put rocks in the way so that your cousin who has a tow truck and is just 2 kilometers down the road gets all the business sort of thing to handle these people. I guess one of the lighthouses that comes to mind about this is the one from Port Bickerton, right? They have a very, very long road, and they've been trying to keep it maintained, but unfortunately there they had a winter storm. I think it was 2 or 3 years ago, and I don't know, Barry, did they ever get it back in shape?
Yes, they did.
They did, good, because it's a nice lighthouse. Okay, this applies to a nonprofit organization that is incorporated under the Society Act. This is the famous Registry of Joint Stocks again. The society operates for public benefits. That's health, recreation, sports, cultural. It covers volunteers whose reimbursed expenses total less than $500. So this wouldn't be seasonal employees because they need workman's comp. If you get students from Service Canada, you got to put them in workman's compensation. The Volunteer Protection Act says you cannot hold a volunteer personally responsible for liability if she is performing Society's Act. So if you had somebody acting as a tour guide to Scouts, for instance, and you know how kids are, they get bored, they start shoving, they push, somebody falls down, they hurt themselves. Well, you can't say that it was the tour guide's fault. If a volunteer requires and has a license to do an activity, she's protected from reckless willingness, gross negligence, except if operating a motor vehicle. We have people who have taken a chainsaw course, for instance. So they get a little certificate saying that, they can operate a chainsaw. We just don't let anybody go onto the trails of the Friends of McNabb's and cut down trees or things like that without taking proper course. So that way we can say she is protected, okay, unless she recklessly picks up a chainsaw that she hasn't done a little course for and starts operating it. Now, the operating a motor vehicle. I was thinking, Bob, last night of your one, Woods Island, where you were showing the boat that was sort of like a little, I guess, military landing vehicle that you've probably seen D-Day, that kind of thing. I don't know about the States, but in Canada, a boat is considered to be a motor vehicle. It is under the Highways Act. That is why you can have harbor police boarding your boat, looking for PFDs, making sure you have all the safety equipment. If you have to have a boat to go out to your lighthouse, boy, I'd suggest that you get some advice from somebody, because I really can't address that. So in our case, we don't have a motor vehicle over on McNabb's. We don't even have an ATV, so that's not a problem. But, lighthouses are on islands, and people do take boats to get them. And I know that we have found, we used to do trips every year. We used to go here, there, and everywhere. And as the years went by, because of insurance, we've been not able to offer trips to go see, for instance, ironbound, West Ironbound, and things like that, because we can't find a boat operator who wants to take us because of the rules and regulations for the insurance. And it's a shame, but it's the way it is. If a volunteer gets hurt, the society will not be held responsible. However, that's why you look at accidental insurance. Other facts. Waivers. I've signed a lot of waivers in my life, but they're used as a caution. They're not legal in a court of law. And you use very simple, plain language on it. You don't try to make it sound tricky. If you have an accident, you're required to report it. But there's no need to interview the involved parties or to negotiate a settlement. But I think, when I think of it, the guy who broke his arm, I don't know that we did tell the insurer, and that was probably a fault on our part, but like I said, he didn't do anything with it. He felt he was well looked after. He'd had a great day on the island, and this happened at the very end of the day, so it's just one of these little things. Other facts, is insurance costs expensive? Moderately so, maybe even more than that. And it's the price to pay for living in Canada. Some of you, I've mentioned I have a grandchild. My daughter and her family live in New Zealand. You cannot sue in New Zealand. It is illegal. And you should see how low their insurance costs are. And if we did the same, and I asked, how could it be? And they say it's because the state will take care of you. This is really the best thing. Getting legal advice before you go talk to an insurance person. Look among your community or your group and see if there is a lawyer that you could talk to, like we did. I mean, she was wonderful. She'd really put a lot of work into this, and she did it for nothing. But, you know, you may be able to get it at a reduced rate. Because I think the problem is if you go to an agent, they have their products, they want to sell you that, and it may not be good for what you want at all. And I think a better thing is if you had hand in mind what you wanted and went to somebody, you may find that, yeah, they could give you one, but they can't give you the other two. That's where a broker might be better. A nonprofit society has the duty to protect itself and its members by buying insurance suitable for the society's activities. Everybody will have a different idea of what they want to do, so what will work for one may not work for another. They should deal with a reputable insurance agent or broker, and they shouldn't go with the cheapest price unless all agents offer the same terms and conditions. You have to read the fine print. This is why if you have a lawyer to look it over, it's a good idea. But again, we never did. We have bought insurance here, I think, through, what is it, Recreation Nova Scotia? And we also have that one. We call that our event insurer. When we do our event on McNabb's, we go to Recreation Nova Scotia's insurer, and we get a certificate that we keep with us all day saying that, yes, we are insured for this particular event. So how much do you want to get? How much, how little? I think it really depends on your comfort zone, really, and what you can afford. And it's not going to be one or the other that wins out. It's going to be something in the middle. So that's about it for insurance. I wish we could have gotten somebody in, but I don't think he would have given you all this background on it. Are there any other questions? Okay, thank you.